Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. So far in this game, and I'm recording these as I go on, so, I'll have more context by the end of the video. But I want to record a segment for each quarterback that's gone out there, talk about what we saw from the offense, what we were looking for. So Joe Flacco, right, was somebody I was not really expecting to see a ton from in the preseason. I don't really care how he looks in these games, if I'm being honest, because I know what Joe Flacco looks like, right? We've all seen good Joe Flacco games in this offense with this personnel for the most part. We've all seen bad Joe Flacco games with this offense, with this personnel. We know what the good stuff's going to be. We know what the bad stuff's going to be. You can fool yourself into thinking, oh, no, the bad stuff's not going to exist. But the bad stuff is going to exist with Joe. The good stuff's going to be there. And I think you saw the good and the bad stuff with Joe Flacco while he was out there. Really nothing surprising. He looks like Joe Flacco. I wasn't going to overreact either way. If he looked amazing, okay. If he looked bad, yeah, I know what Joe Flacco is most of the time, right? So quarterback play-wise, I wasn't really tripping on Joe, but I think he went 7 of 8, got a touchdown on a short field, went 3 and out the first drive. It was a fine outing from Joe Flacco, right? Wasn't overly encouraging, wasn't anything that makes me think the sky's about to fall on the guy. Just a perfectly serviceable start from Joe. You did get to see some stuff from Harold Fainin. I thought Harold Fainin showed you some good stuff. Missed a block on a run play, came back, won on a post route, scored a touchdown on it. You got to see the connection between Joe Flacco and David Njoku again. Thought the first team offensive line looked pretty solid, especially in run blocking. Now, Joe Bitonio wasn't out there because he's on that list of players who never have to play in the preseason again. But Joe Bitonio wasn't out there. They had Zach Center. He held his ground fine. Halfway through the first drive, I think Ethan Posick went down. Luke Whippler stepped in. I think he held up fine. I don't know if he was the one that gave up the sack on Joe Flacco. We'll have to look at the tape there, but for the most part, I thought he was fine. And I thought the run blocking was pretty strong here from the Cleveland Browns. It's been strong throughout training camp. It's been strong throughout the preseason games. I feel really good about this scheme being able to repump some life into a run game. Speaking of the run game, we got to see more of an extended look from Dillon Sampson during the first portion of this game. I was very encouraged by Dillon Sampson. Now, if you watch my channel, you know I'm very concerned about the idea that because Quinshawn's down, we're probably going to be looking, if the roster stays the way it is, of giving this guy 150, 170 carries his first year in the league when he's 21 years old. Super young. He's not the biggest body. I just have my concerns about that being able to hold up over the course of an AFC North NFL season, given how physical this division is on a consistent basis. But we'll see what happens with that, right? The news right now is we don't know what's going on with Quincy. They've been looking for a running back. Brian Robinson was traded to the San Francisco 49ers. I thought that was a player that the Browns should have some interest in. They didn't end up grabbing him. We'll see what happens. Maybe they get like an Aldrich Estime or somebody like that. But, I'm concerned about that. But that being said, I thought Dillon Sampson had some really good moments out there, right? Had the play where he got the reception, broke a tackle, looked really nice out there, had a couple of decent runs. I don't know if we can survive with this combo of him and Jerome Ford as our feature backs, but if the offensive line is good enough, then I guess we'll be able to get away with it for the most part until Quinshon Judkins returns to the team, and we'll see how fast he gets out there. We saw Isaiah Bond out there. We really didn't get to see Isaiah Bond in action with the first team. We'll see if that happens with the second team and third team. Overall, offensively, it was a fine outing. I don't think I'm doing backflips about the offense, but I feel reasonably confident that this offense is going to be not god-awful like they were last year. And unfortunately for this team, coming off a 3-win season, that's the bar. Now, the defense on the other end, and keep in mind, we didn't see like Denzel or Greg Newsome or Myles Garrett, right? Like those guys did not play. So there were some very key starters that did not play in this game for this defense, especially in the secondary. But boy, that front seven, even without Myles Garrett, dominant. And look, they were going up against the Rams, like fourth, third team. It's not like they were getting quality work in. It's not like this is like going up against the Eagles' first team in joint practice. But we've seen this unit go up against the Eagles' first team in joint practice and dominate. So seeing this continue on a much weaker opponent is just a continuance of a trend that we've seen. Mason Graham was getting to the quarterback. Isaiah McGuire was getting to the quarterback. He got a penalty on a sack because of a stupid finger gun penalty, which who is asking for that, NFL? Who's asking for finger gun penalties? I don't know anybody of any background that's like, yeah, that's what we need to do. We need to punish guys for doing finger guns in NFL games. But that aside, that silliness aside, you saw everything you needed to see from this front seven. Devin Bush, I don't know what his status is going to be to start the season, but it looks like the Browns might have really uncovered a gem with him. He was a former draft bust of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has turned out to be pretty solid for the Cleveland Browns last year, and it looks like he's going to do it again. He was all over the field making plays for the Browns. Carson Schlesinger all over the field making plays for the Browns. We saw Aiden Huntington with the first team offense, actually. He was a fullback for them, and then we saw Aiden Huntington have a really good play, in my opinion, where he just shot up an alley on a kick return, forced the returner opposite the wrong side of the field, and then that returner got stuffed back at the 10. So Aiden Huntington getting some work here with the first team offense as a fullback. You know, he's a good pass rusher, and then also he could play special teams. If he could be one of these like fun slash players, like our version of a Pat Ricard or something like that, I'm all for it. So pretty excited with what you've seen from the first team defense. They look like they're going to be solid, and we ain't even see them plug in the biggest part, right? Denzel Ward, going to make a huge difference on how that secondary looks. So is Greg Newsome. But Myles Garrett, big difference maker, that Myles Garrett. He's not going to play in the preseason, obviously, but I imagine if Myles was out there, we would have been even more thrilled with what we've seen out the first team. So that was the first team unit. Then we got to look at the second team unit. Let's start with the offense. I thought Dillon Gabriel in the first half of this game, and we still got more that I'm going to break down from Dillon to talk about. I thought he looked really solid in the first half, right? He operated those two drives really effectively. Had the one drive stall out at the 10, didn't finish it with the touchdown. Part of that was Gage Larvin dropped the ball that was clearly in his hands. So, you know, he didn't finish the drive with the touchdown there, but you got points. 2-minute drill, I thought he executed that outside of like one little moment to perfection. I thought that he got the play call in late, got to the motion late. The motion was sloppy from Gage Larvin. The route was shitty, and then the ball was shitty from Dillon Gabriel. It could have been turned over. But outside that one play where I thought the execution was poor from the top down, right? Play call in late, that's the coaching staff. Personnel shifts in late, that's the coaching staff. The ball was late, the ball was bad, that's the quarterback, and the route was terrible and the motion was terrible. That's on Gage. So outside that one play, which did not result in anything negative, I thought he executed that 2-minute drill pretty much to perfection, scored a touchdown on it. That's really good, and a continuation of what you want to see out of Dillon, which is somebody who can handle these kind of responsibilities, run the offense at a high enough level to where you feel confident with him being the backup. And I think so far in the first half, you know, you feel a lot better about that than maybe you did after last week where he made those two big mistakes in his first couple of drives. We'll see how he finishes out his time here, and I will come back to this video and update it to talk about that. But so far, so good from Dillon Gabriel. Amani Marshall, I thought, had some nice moments in the first half. We'll see what he does in the second half as I continue to record this. And defensively, once they take the starters out, we're down to the backup secondary. There's really not much to engage with. But that's my thoughts so far on the first half of this game. I'll check back in on this video. It'll be instantaneous if you're watching this after the stream on what's going to happen in the second half. Now that the second half has been completed, right? I did my recap of the first half here, and now I've recorded the second half. And look, there's no way around it. Shedeur had a rough one. It was an official rough game, right? You know the sign of a rough game from an athlete where just stuff ain't going well is that Gatorade towel. You put that Cam Newton towel over your head, it's been a rough day, right? We've seen that dreaded Gatorade towel over the face of LeBron James. It hasn't been good. Deshaun Watson, you know what I mean? When the towel is being rubbed, good stuff, right? When the towel is hanging over the head, not good stuff. It was an official Gatorade towel performance from Shedeur. My man did not look good. Now, look, I'm going to be honest here, right? Because there's going to be a lot of people who've been waiting a very long time to use this as an opportunity, not necessarily to dunk on Shedeur Sanders, the person, but to dunk on Shedeur Sanders supporters. My job is not to dunk on one fan base or the other. My job is to talk about the football, right? And if we're being honest about the football, we have to acknowledge that this is the second half of the final preseason game and that we shouldn't be taking too much from it. Did Shedeur look bad in this one? Yes. Does that mean that all of a sudden you should be talking about Shedeur getting cut from the roster? No. Right? Everything that Shedeur did before that game still counts. You know, the game wasn't great, but maybe there will be opportunities to learn from this game for him, right? I still think he is developing. Now, the one thing I will say to the Shedeur fans who have been very, very hostile towards anybody with any slight amount of criticism towards him, this is the kind of stuff that Shedeur needs to work on that we've been talking about for a while, and it's not stuff that people are saying out of bad faith, right? The criticism that Shedeur holds on to the ball too long, that he needs to learn to be a little bit more comfortable in structure, that's not people saying stuff out of bad faith. That's people saying this stuff because they want Shedeur to be a better quarterback. And I think that was demonstrated today. I think Shedeur's biggest problem in this game, outside, look, the line wasn't great, but, you know, it's not like he was going up against the Rams starters, right? Like the Rams were playing scrubs, the Browns were playing scrubs around him. So it's not really something I care about if the personnel was good for Shedeur. It wasn't good for Shedeur. It wasn't good for the Rams, right? So, you know, scrubs going up against scrubs, and I hate to call people scrubs, but you know what I mean? Third stringers, fourth stringers going up against other third stringers, fourth stringers. It's a fair fight. The blocking from the pass blocking perspective wasn't great, but I thought Shedeur in that first preseason game did a much better job of keeping his head upfield, of stepping up in the pocket, and not relying as much on rolling out. In this game, he seemed to make a backward step there, right? Like he was rolling out a lot. He wasn't really waiting for stuff. He wasn't hanging in there, right? That's the stuff I really liked from his tape week one that just wasn't there today. There were a couple situations where he stepped up, but he just didn't let the ball go. I'm going to go off and I'm going to say this. I think Shedeur is simply hitting a rookie wall, right? We saw this with Dillon Gabriel the 2 weeks before the preseason where all the reports were that Dillon Gabriel looks awful, right? Daryl Ryder was on radio talking about Dillon Gabriel looking like the worst quarterback he's ever seen, and he was having bad practices. He was hitting a wall for sure. And now we're seeing Dillon start to get on the other side of that wall, and what Dillon did in this game I thought was legitimately impressive, right? It was indicative of what the coaching staff had been saying all along, that Dillon was ahead of Shedeur, that Dillon is more ready to play right now, and that Shedeur has a lot of upside, and they're still going to try to get that out of him, right? I think that was all on display today. And my point is that Dillon had those rough couple of weeks. He hit the wall. He came out of it. He looks a lot better. Shedeur clearly hitting a wall, right? Struggling to trust the structure of the offense, reading it the way that the offense needs to be read. He's hitting a wall there. Doesn't mean his career is over. Doesn't mean that you got to go and have these hot takes, call him garbage just because you want to dunk on his fans. It just means that the guy had a rough game, right? He's a rookie quarterback. He certainly looked like a rookie quarterback today. He had himself a rough game. I'm not going to overreact to it in a negative way, the same way I advise people to not overreact to one positive game. And again, this is why we don't overreact in the preseason, because you don't want people to swing violently based off preseason performance. I hope we all learn that lesson here because there's been a lot of overreacting in the preseason. So, all in all, it was a very rough outing for Shedeur. He really struggled to find the structure, the rhythm of the offense. It seems like he might have hurt his oblique again. He didn't play in the last drive of the game. And it wasn't helpful that Tyler Huntley came in with the same offense against the same defense that he'd been playing and struggling against all day and went right down the field for a game-winning drive. Now, it was mainly assisted by penalties, but he was more impressive as a passer in that drive in this specific game than Shedeur was. That's not a good look for Shedeur. People are going to use that against him. Again, I'm not going to overreact to it, right? It wasn't a good day for Shedeur Sanders. Again, official Gatorade top performance. Not good. But still more things to come in his career other than the third quarter or fourth quarter of preseason games. Either way, you want to see him improve, get better, right? I think the thing I was disappointed the most in was the seeming regression that he's had in his pocket mechanics. Seemed to really default to rolling out a lot. I hope he learned a lesson, right? Stay in that pocket. The pocket is safe, right? Step up, work through it, get through your progressions, get through your reads, let the offense help you, make your life easier. I know it's nice when Shedeur makes some of these tight window throws and everybody gets excited, but you can't live off tight window throws in the NFL. You gotta be able to make your life easier by using your mind to get the ball where it needs to be on time early. And that's somewhere where Shedeur is going to have to make some progress. And I think somebody in chat pointed this out. It shouldn't be a surprise that Dillon is a little bit more advanced in this area than Shedeur. Dillon's played a lot more college football at higher levels, right? Shedeur has only played 2 years, major college football. Dillon has played 6 years FBS football versus Shedeur's 2. He's played way more snaps. He is the FBS touchdown leader from the quarterback position. He's had a very long career, very experienced career. Preseason football is something that he was going to excel at, and he seemed to excel at that. So it shouldn't really be that much of a surprise. But the Browns are probably looking at it like, hey, Dillon's going to be somebody we're looking at to see what we can get out of him right now. And then Shedeur's going to be somebody we develop behind the scenes for a little while here. I don't think that's crazy. But that all being said, right, the Shedeur element of it all, that's not the only thing that happened in the second half of this game. I think the most impressive thing that happened in the second half of this game was straight up Aiden Huntington. Aiden Huntington, I'm excited to see what kind of role he can get during the regular season because he straight up dominated this game in the second half. Low key, the only reason the Browns were able to win this game is because Aiden Huntington was just a monster on defense. I think he is a highlight to look at. I thought Amani Marshall continued to have a strong preseason, the same one that he's been having. You know, got some successful runs in that game-winning drive as well. So I think you saw some stuff from the UDFA guys that you like. And again, if we just zoom out a little bit, right, and get out of the immediate conversation of just talking about this game, and we just look at the rookie draft class so far, right? We have seen something from every rookie to get you excited, and I think that's a great place to be at with your draft class. Mason Graham dominating 2 days of joint practices with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's incredibly encouraging. That's your 5th overall pick, right? You get to your second pick, that is Carson Schlesinger. You've seen a lot out of Carson. People have been raving about Carson all camp. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to see Quincy Junkins, but when he was out there in OTAs, he was pretty impressive. Then you jump to the 3rd round selection. Harold Faden had a couple of nice moments in this game, had a touchdown pass from Joe Flacco off of a post route. It was pretty nice to see Harold Faden have that, right? You go to the 4th round pick, Dylan Sampson. He's had a couple of runs, a nice little run reception in this game, something to give you excitement about him going forward. And the fact that he started this game, very encouraging, right? Even for me, somebody who's a little bit more skeptical about his ability to really contribute day one. Then you move on to Dillon Gabriel, right? The other 3rd round pick. I think these last 2 preseason games have been pretty impressive from him. I think this last outing was exactly what you wanted to see from him, right? Did not make the same mistakes he made in the first one. No turnovers, scored a touchdown, scoring drives both times he was out there, long drives both times he was out there, operated the offense at a very efficient and effective level. I mean, super efficient preseason from Dillon. Very impressive. Exactly what you wanted to see from him coming into this situation. And you're pretty impressed. Like, I think a lot of people were perplexed about the Dillon Gabriel pick when it happened, but I think after this preseason, a lot more people understand why this coaching staff, myself included, felt this way about Dillon. I at least see the vision for Dillon Gabriel now, right? Which wasn't necessarily the case when they made the selection for Dillon. So you're at a much better space there. So you got to see something out of Dillon. And then your last pick of the draft, Shedeur Sanders, look, was not impressive today, but was impressive in his first preseason outing. So you got that level of encouragement. And then we're talking about UDFAs now, right? Amani Marshall, an undrafted free agent. That's bonus money right there. He's looked pretty good. A lot of people think Donovan McMillan might be able to make the roster. I think he'll be on the practice squad. A lot of people feel like Gage Labradin might make the roster. Again, I think he's practice squad material, not main roster material just now. Aiden Huntington might make the roster, right? Amani Marshall might make the roster. You know, very good year of offseason acquisitions for this football team as far as the draft process is concerned. Right now, at least it looks like, right? So you're about as encouraged as you could be about all of these draft picks. You have had something to encourage you at some point in this process. And I think that's very successful. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the preseason overall. We can micro-analyze and overreact to individual games here or there, but the reality is that you've seen something positive from every single draft pick and even some UDFAs who have really jumped out to you. And if this trend continues for the Cleveland Browns, we're going to be talking about this draft class for quite a while because this is the kind of draft class that can change a lot there. So all that, pretty good. That's my thoughts so far on kind of recapping this preseason game and then trying to make sure they'll talk about everything that's possible to be talked about. But